thank you so much for braving the rains. And I know after eating the pakoras, you must be feeling really glad that you braved the rains and came here. Chai and pakora sets the mood for a perfect evening that's we're all very, very excited about. It's the first time that salt has come through Jaipur in this fantastic way. And we have to say we are completely overwhelmed with the welcome. It's been an amazing, amazing experience to just have everyone here. So we have three fabulous women joining us who are going to share some amazing stories with us. We have consciously decided to stay away from a very formal, boring introduction, but I do have to take this moment to say that each one of them has been a path breaker. They're all powerhouse women. We have Shrayana Bhattacharya, who's written Desperately Seeking Shah Rukh Khan, Shah Rukh. We have Miss Archana Surana, who's built this fabulous space that is so vibrant and alive, and that's such a landmark in Jaipur, and that promises to create a better future for Jaipur. So we're really, really grateful that you've hosted us here. And both these wonderful women have been brought together by co-founder of SALT, Shinjini Kumar, who comes with a fantastic experience in finance of over 30 years. What I find most fascinating is even though anyone and everyone will tell you all the things about how she's been with RBI and how she's done, all the other things, what's most exciting is how she makes the whole conversation around finance so much fun. And I'm looking forward to hearing all three of them share their stories, share their experiences, because creating anything of your own in this time and age comes with very different kinds of challenges, whether it's challenges from home, challenges from people around, or your personal biases, prejudices, a self-created image of what you can do and what you can't do. And yeah, we're really looking forward to hearing all three of you share how all of these things are probably not a big deal now. And we're looking forward to hearing so much more from you. I'm over to you, Shinjini.
Hello. The rains have taken a toll on the women who are going to miss this. But Shrayana, Archana, please come. What we are going to do is to record this conversation so we can put it up and share widely. And for that, I will request you to maintain silence when we are speaking. But I definitely want you to take advantage of the fact that this is a small gathering and really ask questions and engage with these two awesome women that I'm going to introduce you to. So to start with, you are all from here, Jaipur. And you don't need introduction to Archana. But for me, just coming here and discovering this place, and so for Shrayana, it's been such a real pleasure because building an institution is not easy. And being an entrepreneur and an educationist together is double and many other hats that you wear. So, lot of admiration for you. Thank you for having us here. What I will do is to come straight to the heart of what we are here to discuss, and that is this wonderful book, which I encourage all of you to buy and read and gift to other women in particular. It's called Desperately Seeking Shah Rukh. It attracted my attention, like many people's attention, because of its title. But when I started reading it, it was really a wealth of, understanding about a society in which we live and in which we have grown up, and never really thought like that. So I'm going to just get started. I'm going to ask many questions around what is the experience of being a woman like in this country. But I'm going to give straight to Shrayana and ask her what made her write this book and what made her choose this title.
Firstly, thanks. Am I audible? It's fine? Perfect. Thanks, everyone. I know it's raining, cats and dogs, so I think all of you being here is very special. And thank you so much for hosting us, and thank you for organizing this, Shinjini. This book was never supposed to be a book. I was in my early 20s. I just finished my master's in economics at D School. And, they taught us very well how to administer survey questionnaires. So I was very, very pompous in my early 20s, thinking I was going to save women with all the data that I was going to collect. As many young economists tend to be very pompous with the skills that they acquire. And I was working for SEVA, which I think many of us here may know of. It's the largest labor union of working women, particularly those in the informal economy in the world. And I was sent to Ahmedabad to collect data on the wages and working conditions of women who were making agarbattis and garments at home, earning about a quarter of minimum wage. And I showed up in this area, which had just actually recently recovered from a riot as well. And I was asking my traditional questions: how much do you earn? How many hours do you work? And I noticed that the women I was speaking to had this completely bored, glazed expression in their eyes. And I'm scanning the room. If anyone has that expression, I will stop speaking. And if you're bored, please raise your hand and we'll do something different. Because I hate boring people. And at that time, I realized I was really boring these women. So we realized this was not working. The women there used to call me Survey Wali Didi. And they told me that they were so used to people coming to ask and do surveys. And all of us used to wear the khadi kurta with kajal in our eyes, usually used to be Bengali. And they said, you people come, do these surveys, but kya fayda hota hai? Like, what happens after, right? So they said, could we talk about something else? And I realized the traditional method of being an economist was just not working. And I started asking everyone about their favorite actor. And lo and behold, in this neighborhood where I was really not expecting to find Shah Rukh Khan fans, because I was always told that he is a hero of urban, wealthy, very, very, sort of wealthy, the upper crust of society, NRIs, so on and so forth. Suddenly, these women in the slums of Ahmedabad, low-income neighborhoods, they were just ecstatic to talk about Shah Rukh Khan. And I realized when they started to talk about him, about their favorite actor, why they liked him, how they watched him, which movies they'd seen, suddenly the tone and tenor of the conversations just changed. There was more energy. And in economics, we're taught that you can understand how much income or purchasing power a person has based on what they can buy, right? So if you like that sari, are you able to buy it? And I decided, instead of using the traditional lens of economics, which would have said, can you buy a sari, can you buy rice, can you buy a roti, can you make bread? I decided to ask all these women, if Shah Rukh Khan is your favorite actor, do you have the money on your own to watch him? And the heartbreaking truth, which is something I navigate through the course of the book, is that most of us don't. The data shows that only 8% of women in the country watch a film in a cinema hall once every month. When you start to look at figures about access to purchasing power, 6 out of 10 people in a cinema hall are men. There are huge gaps when it comes to gaps between men and women in their access to mobile phones, constant access to television, access to cinema halls and public space. And I realized actually none of these women were telling me a story about Shah Rukh Khan. And on the second page of the book, I say, it's not a book about Shah Rukh. I'm too ordinary a fan to analyze him. I can't do it. It's a story about how women fight to find purchasing power, freedom, access to markets, access to media, access to spaces, to actually be able to watch your favorite actor. And what I did then, Shinjini, was I took that same question, who is your favorite actor, and I asked it in the forests of Jharkhand, in rural Uttar Pradesh. So we have women from a cross-section of caste, class, religion, different parts of our society. And what unites us, I followed these women for 15 years. I interviewed each one of them, what was happening in their jobs, what was happening in their personal lives. Every year we'd speak. And so it's 15 years of their lives and my life. And the two things that are common amongst all of us is that we all want to have our own incomes so that we can watch Shah Rukh whenever we want without asking somebody else, just to do it for our own pleasure with our own money. And the other fact is that we're fans of Shah Rukh Khan. And so that's the story of the book. It's a 15-year journey based on research and trying to pull data and all these stories together. Part of it is heartbreaking, and then part of it I hope is also, I hope is hopeful. And
Yes.
yeah, that's the story.
So it is. Can you hear me? First of all, congratulations on the book. I know that it's been a while since you finished writing it, but a book like this takes a long time in the making, and I know it would have been a lot of hard work. So I want to ask you, Archana ji, a question, which is about, first of all, are you a Shah Rukh Khan fan? Secondly, as she said, it is about the economic empowerment or the autonomy rather than empowerment. I'll say the autonomy of a woman to make those decisions about her life, about her preferences, about her where she spends her time, with whom is she seen. And because you've had such a career, I just want you to talk a little bit about how do you personally see it. I know that you haven't yet read the book, and I have a copy for you. But I do want you to talk from your experience a little bit about what Shrayana just talked about.
So, Shah Rukh, I was quite curious, I mean, why Shah Rukh with women and why with money? I understand he's made a lot of wealth, and with wealth, I connect definitely women. Because when it comes to wealth creation, money is one aspect of it. And women are actually creating true wealth on the planet. And that's where the connection of Shah Rukh definitely came in. And then while I just asked one of your colleagues, and she says, I really found the connection. I said, हाँ, फौजी से शुरुआत हुई थी हमारी. And वहाँ जो फौजी में he was a heartthrob. He was a heartthrob of every girl, not because of his looks, but the character that he portrayed in Fauji. That charisma. So I think when we look at what really inspires women is perhaps charisma. And that charisma is what Shah Rukh is all about. And he's really somebody who's really done good for himself. And I think that's a beautiful part at least when I see my journey, I see that yes, hard work, toil, what even he says that there's no substitute to hard work. It says you can't just be at leisure. That's what he says. And I somehow feel that, women who are really doing path-breaking work, if we really go into their stories, it's really hard work and toil. I know nurturing a home is a big task, but in the business world, in the world where you are trying to make money, it's a huge amount of effort that a woman has to put in. So I think your book really touches very deeply these three aspects, women, money, and Shah Rukh Khan. Whereas from the TRP point of view, I think it's great. It's great. It's super. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. And also it brought you face to face with Shah Rukh. You did an interview, right? Oh, you met him. What was that like? Yes, I want to hear about that before we get more.
So the book, the story of the book is, so it came out in November 2021. It won its first award from the Times of India in, I think, March or April 2022. I have a feeling someone related to him, I'm not quite sure, was at this particular event where the book received its first prize. Because almost immediately after, I think a few weeks after, we got a message from his team saying, we'd come give us a copy. And so I went to Manat. It's actually, if you Google me, of course, the book's done well, it's won prizes, all of that, mashallah, it's done very well. But the first thing that pops up now when you look me up is Shah Rukh Khan hosts Shrayana, which he did. And the book is with him. He wrote a note for me where he said, thank you for putting me to some good use, finally. Because I think he understands. And actually the interesting thing was he's a student of economics, right? He completely understood the book is not about him. It was a connection that was very easy for him to make. He understood exactly what, that the book uses him as a research method as opposed to being about
it's a trope.
him. Yeah, and he gets it. And he really enjoyed that because, he said it's rare. There's a bit, the paperback version has some bits from the note. Some bits from the note I will never share ever. It's too private. But yeah, it was really wonderful. So it was not an interview. It was we had coffee. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. That's so wonderful. So I'm going to just read a little bit from the book because I want to come back to the topic of women and autonomy because I think we don't talk enough about this. But I want to read a little bit from the book because, among other things, it's also a very well-written book. And you know, one of the hallmarks of a good book, I don't know how many people here are readers, but I am. One of the hallmarks of a good book is that you can open it from any page and start reading. So
Thank you,
this is
Shinjini.
one
You're
of
very
those
kind.
books. And I do have many such books on my shelf. Like we have 5,000 books in our small apartment in Mumbai. So, so I can talk about it. But there are a few books which every so often I'll just, you know, take it down and start reading from any place and it will say something to me. Now the point is that I offered to you to read the book, but I don't have my glasses. So what I'm going to do is to ask Shrayana to read it. But I wanted, so there's a very central idea here where you talk about, you know, where you talk about the women who, how did you decide to, you know, chase these, maybe you can talk about it or maybe you can read it, but I found this idea that where you divide women into the fans of Shah Rukh Khan into the type of women who are married women or single women or women who are married and working or married, were working but are now at home, and how every part of that humanity feels judged by each other. And I think you use that, so because you were talking about your research methodology in the role of Shah Rukh, I find that very interesting because most women can relate to it. And it really doesn't matter from where you read. I'll give you that chapter. But I was reading this part about, you know, the young Bengali fan who talks about it, but you can read anything. Yeah.
I actually just wanted to tell everyone the book. I mean, I don't know. I think I was mad and I was in love. So I'm in love with Shah Rukh Khan. So maybe that's part of the madness. But the thing that I wanted to do was I really wanted to give the reader a flavor of what, you know, what Shah Rukh Khan means is very different things based on where you are in the income spectrum of the country. So in the book, there are 4 sections. The first section is about fairly anglicized, typically upper caste, upper class women who are part of the top 10% of the sort of economic decile of our country, right? Which is now where I'm going to read this section from. And this chapter is actually called An Elite Composite, where I interviewed about 85 such fans of Shah Rukh, and I create a composite based on all the interviews, and I'll give you a sense. I'll read. The second section goes into the emerging middle class, which is women who are the first in their families to actually step out of the home, to finish school, finish college, have a job, speak English, and their stories. And this is the emerging middle class, which has really been impacted post-1991, post-liberalization. The third section of the book goes into our economic precariat. So these are women who are domestic workers. There's a migrant domestic worker who moves from Jharkhand to live in Delhi. She's a bad Shah Rukh fan. It's a great story. That's actually one of my favorite stories
Rose,
in the
right?
book. Lily, yeah.
Lily.
And there's home-based workers who make garments in UP. The women I told you about in Ahmedabad. And the fourth section actually is outside his house in Mannat, where I just interview random fans who are all gathered outside the house just to understand, why are you here? What joy does it give you? How did you pay for yourself to be here? And there's some very interesting stories you can learn about the economics of our country by just talking to people outside. But this section I'm reading from is from that first section, which is the elite. And I'll maybe just read 2 paragraphs and then,
And I chose it today because I expected to have that cross-section of people.
I think that's,
but
that's very, I think that makes a lot of sense. In 2018, a young Bengali fan complained that the romance in Shah Rukh's films had ruined her for life. She accused Shah Rukh of making her a hopeless romantic, forever expecting the perfect proposal from a man, one where he would emulate her hero's on-screen romantic routines. Eventually, she appended gender roles by proposing marriage to her boyfriend through song and poetry. Abandoning all expectations of the man behaving like Shah Rukh's romantic avatar, she took on the role of Shah Rukh in the proposal, going down on her knees as she romanced her beloved and asked him to marry her. The women who responded to my call for interviews felt romantically ruined by Shah Rukh Khan as well. They were a diverse group that I traced through a technique called snowballing, where one fan would connect me to another and so on until what started as a snowball became an avalanche. Tired of being statistically rigorous in my regular work life, I decided to follow a curated section of fangirls instead of a rigid sampling rule to select women. I think I'll close here because if I continue, I'm wondering. Maybe I'll just say this one line. Of the women who are, okay, let me do this. Actually, it'll make sense because I want to connect to what you were saying. I decided most of the women interested in talking to me were approaching their mid 30s. They were thoughtful about their fandom. Marital status, I think this goes to the point Shinjini was making. Marital status was an organizing principle of their selfhood. It was often the first thing they wrote about themselves in messages or conversations. Every interview call, the first thing women would say when I'd ask them to introduce themselves, they would tell me whether they were married or not. This was the first thing that almost everyone, just instinctively, it would just come out. Everyone used English to talk about sex, love, and marriage. The women I met believed they had more in common with characters on American TV shows than heroines in Hindi films.
I can't relate with this idea. I know, but that's not what the truth is. But as far as I am concerned, I can't relate with the idea of falling for a man on the screen, seeing things from that perspective. I feel it's too trivial for a woman to actually
Be a
that
fan?
way. Be that way. You know. There's so much more to look forward to. And for women who get a little more overwhelmed with this idea of a man on screen as their, their ideal or the aspiration or the romance of their life, I somehow couldn't relate with. I can't relate with it. I've never felt that way. So I can't get that.
So how did the proposal happen in your case? I'm just
while
trying
I
to
talk
understand the
about-
idea of
okay.
romance.
So while I talk about self-reliance, the first thing when I saw the profile of my husband, he was a lawyer. So I said, and I came from a business family, my parents, and my mother-in-law, a professor in German. I said, उनकी मम्मी काम करती है, तो मुझे भी काम करने को मिलेगा.
Oh, that is very good.
That's the first thing that occurred to me. That's very good. And without even seeing him, I created an image of a tall, handsome guy, fair looking, very generous, and just fits my, बस मुझसे थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा लंबा होगा, kind of stuff, कहने का मतलब है कि as a pair it would fit in well, but फिर भी थोड़ा सा लंबा होगा. And when I see him, he's the opposite.
He was like Shah Rukh Khan.
No,
Short.
with mustaches. Huh? So when I see him, and I feel so comfortable with him, as if I know him for years, and he's not that fair, and he's got mustaches, and he's completely different than what I imagined. Yeah. But that did not, it wasn't something that broke my image. Rather, it was such a moment of acceptance. So I think for me, when it comes to women, money, I think the first choice that you make is your life partner. Somebody who will be in your, you can connect and, who would actually facilitate that journey of being self-reliant. My husband, a very generous person. He never stopped me from it. He always said, मेरे पास मत आना, तुम्हारी जितनी हिम्मत हो उतना जितना करना है करो. मुझे bother नहीं करना. Because I have my own profession. Right? So that is something, probably helped me grow more. And for me, that's how I looked at. So, and very interestingly, girls generally, they want to settle down first and then get married. I was looking for marriage first and then settling down. I said, ठिकाना जगह लग जाए, फिर काम शुरू करो. Rather than getting disrupted in between, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way how, and that was in 95.
Yeah.
When I got married.
Can I just actually
Very
want to react
practical
to a
thing,
couple of
please.
things? Firstly, I think we should retire this idea that women who think that an actor is sexy are sort of projecting all their hopes and dreams. Ye to kabhi nahi hota. And I think that's, in fact, the research in the book shows that people are extremely pragmatic about the way they understand actors and any star. It could even be cricketers, footballers, any icon, even politicians. Things that you project onto people and things that you also understand. Like for one example, I mean, you'll see this throughout the book, is that everybody tells me, don't like him in Dar, love him in DDLJ, right? This idea that there are roles in which Mr. Khan has played stalkers who are out there harming women actively, and there's a distance that people will form for themselves. And I think the other interesting thing, which you realize at least through the course of the research, is we live in a society, I mean, let's sort of, look at the numbers. Only 18%, and there's data from 1911 all the way up till now on women's employment trends in the book at the back and through the text. We live in a country where only 18% of all labor income, all income goes to women. So all of us who are earning an income of any kind, we are part of one of the tiniest minorities statistically in the country. In that world, and you see this in the book, these women are so exhausted. There's a feminization of exhaustion. Ghar, mard. One woman said to me, she's a bureaucrat who I follow in the book, she said, managing files is far easier than managing a husband. And these are women who are in the middle of that toil. And they're so exhausted that to them, Mr. Khan is not, some candy floss idea of a hero. I think that kind of fandom and that idea we should
He's
retire.
romantic relief.
He is relief. He's not even romantic relief. In fact, he's just relief. I mean, so many women will tell me, I just watch him when I'm feeling really low. There's a woman who was forced to get married to someone she didn't want to marry, comes actually from this state. And she always says to me, she says, and she's made a very happy marriage. Exactly as I think what you were saying, right? That, you sort of create a different kind of wealth. She's raising her boys to be progressive and she loves them and that's her life and that's her passion. But she spends, I know, in a week, when things get really low, she'll switch on a song. She'll look and it'll give her some sense of escape, right? It's fun. It could be Hindustani classical music for someone. For many, it's cricket. For many, it's different things. For the women I follow, it's Shah Rukh Khan. So I think that's one important distinction. The other thing I wanted to just, I completely agree with what you were saying about this thing about life partner. But the other very interesting trend is India now, currently, historically, we have the largest number of single women we've ever had in our society. America, the US, so many countries now are reporting more and more women who are single and choosing to be so. It's really hard. With all my privileges, to find a home for myself in New Delhi, it is a nightmare. So you can imagine what it's like for any other woman. It is a nightmare. And given that world that we're in, I think for so many women, while there's the idea of the partner, I think that their focus is also, if I want to build a career for myself, or forget career, even if I want to self-actuate in any way possible, maybe in some cases a partner is helpful, but in some cases a partner can actually detract from that process of self-actualization. And I think we are a generation of women, I mean, I'm steadfastly single, nothing but like the best offer is going to move me into marriage at all. And one of the things I kept hearing, and I'll close with this, which is in a village in UP, and this is, the first generation of women who watched TV, who have a TV in this particular area, this is in Rampur. This one woman said to me when I was asking, and they used to take money they used to make from their garment making and organize a Shah Rukh screening once every month. So they'd get, their contractor would bring a little thing, they'd put it on and so on. It's described in the book. And when I asked them, why do you like this guy so much? Like, what's going on? They said to me, we've never seen a hero cut a carrot in a film before. Kitne achhe se he peels vegetables. And you'll see this. And it's interesting, when I study the movies and you see this in his films, and I think this idea of men who will also share the load, I mean, right now, look at the data. An average woman in India is spending 8 hours on housework. Men are spending 29 minutes. We are in the bottom 5 of the world with Syria, Pakistan, Iran, and I think it's South Korea, when it comes to the share of men helping in housework. And I think it's interesting, exactly as you said, this idea of a partnership, but that's an equal partnership. And I think the terms of that are really changing. And I think in Shah Rukh, they just see someone who plays these characters, who shows up, right, in emotional labor and domestic labor, which is always historically seen as a woman's domain. And I think he really redefined masculinity that way. But I would say that, this idea of an equal partnership, I think I completely agree with you. I think that's so critical in the pathway. And if there's no equal partnership, then no partnership. And I think we should be able, I think, as a society to support women in those decisions as well.
I'll just say something that's very naughty. Huh? So last weekend, over a Sunday, so I was just scrolling. Huh? So those reels. Huh? So Shah Rukh and Madhuri Dixit, those stage shows, music shows. And he's got this beard and everything, and Madhuri is also at that age. And मैंने उसको 2 बार देखा. What Shah Rukh did was, it was a fantastic romantic song and his moves. And on stage, he's doing that on stage. And it was actually pretty intimate that he was with Madhuri, right? And then he says, मैं इतना नजदीक आ रहा था और आपने कट कर दिया इसको. And he actually mentioned close to her neck till here. And I said, man, on stage, this is pretty intimate. But दोबारा देखा, and actually it was quite sensuous, right? So what I felt was that, it's interesting that he's pretty sensuous that way. And he's got that charisma, which is interesting. Not that he's very good looking.
I totally disagree, but ठीक है.
Good looking doesn't really.
Okay.
really fit in.
I think I need to intervene in this.
No, but I agree with what she's saying. Not on the good-looking part, but on the sensuous part. But one thing, I'll just quickly, one thing I want to say. It's really interesting.
So you can edit all this stuff.
No, please
no,
don't.
no.
No, but it's really interesting because I was watching a very interesting interview of Kajol's recently. I don't know if you saw, she has a new film out, it's on OTT. She was saying something about how she always felt very comfortable doing intimate scenes with him because she said he really, and I'm quoting her, she said, he really understands how to respect a woman in that kind of situation because it's a very awkward situation,
No, his
I imagine.
eye contact was, gosh,
But the other thing I'll say to you, which is funny, is that if I interview many fans who first generation watching cable TV didn't have cable before that, right? Like I'm born into that generation, the 1990s kids. What was interesting was so many of us would talk about, and it's in the book, these interviews where all these journalists would keep asking him, how come you haven't had an affair? Right? And as if the idea is that once you're successful in the Hindi film business, having an affair is like a status symbol, that you must have one. And he looked so bored, as bored as those ladies were when I was asking them those questions, when people keep asking him this. And he keeps saying, he says, these women are my colleagues. They're not conquests, they're colleagues. And I think it's really interesting, especially through the interviews, so many women would tell me that they connected with this idea that he was talking about women in the workplace. The film set is a workplace. There are norms of professionalism. And I think so much of that sensuality that we're seeing, there are norms and ethics and codes of conduct, which
And
I think really
respect.
come through. Exactly.
I think that respect as an equal is something which really resonates with a lot of people. I want to say 2 things. One is on the point of the housework. I think that those are very, sad statistics. And when we talk to women and we ask them why they don't, even if they have money, even if they earn money, why do they not take care of their own money? And the answer always is that I am too busy. So you spend a large part of your life when you should have been building your wealth or building for your financial independence, giving up that autonomy because you are too busy taking care of children and the care responsibility and spending those extra 8 hours at work. And therefore, and then at the end of it, then you end up becoming dependent on that person. And it's really sad because, a lot of my friends are obviously men and then you become like the butt of jokes. And you see these very stupid, very debasing jokes about how women don't understand money, how they're only interested in buying jewelry. And so I find something that you said very interesting, which is I first wanted to find the man and the location before I start my journey of entrepreneurship. And I think that's a very pragmatic thing to say because for a lot of women, actually building up to that point and then facing that disruption, the number of stories that I have heard where, I was very good in my studies, I was building my career, I was building my business, I reached up to that point, and then there is a moment of silence. because you get married, you change your city, and then you are completely adrift because you don't know. Everybody has a view on what you wear, what you eat, where you sleep, and you're suddenly like, because more or less a lot of parents now raise their daughters as equal of their brothers, and this reality which used to hit you as a child when you were young now only hits you after that happens to you. And then you're like a deer in the headlight. You just don't know how to deal with that situation. So maybe it was a smart move for you to do that.
Life is accepting your surroundings, your environment, because you can't just go, saying that that's me, I don't want to do it, or you challenge yourself. I know it's a part of a culture. कि ठीक है शादी करनी है. The parents feel it's their responsibility. Fine. And why do they feel? Because they feel that a good partner at that age fulfills a lot of your needs, your emotional needs, your other needs, and everything. So if you're getting married, I mean, why not marry at the right time, find your spot, and then move on? Rather than, so I think most of the time we've seen people resisting, girls resisting marriage. So if you're comfortable and you're comfortable challenging the status quo, it's fine. So, but if you feel that it is not something that you need to challenge, why not go with the flow?
Be practical.
And just be practical about it and get things going.
So we do meet many women
A
who,
lot of younger
yeah,
women also today, they need this kind of pragmatic understanding about it.
both ways, either that or to say I stand.
But
by.
I don't
Yeah.
even, but I actually don't
Yeah.
even think
Yeah.
it's a either or
Yeah.
thing. I think the point is we need a certain ecosystem to thrive,
Yes,
right? To
yes.
do, I think, whatever it is. And it could be joy in anything. It could be joy in raising kids. It could be joy in so many things. I think the larger point that at least I walk away based on this 15 years of work is that I just feel that when women start to walk away from what are very conformist paths, right? Acceptable paths, there are huge taxes that our society is imposing on them. And I think one thing to say is sure, if you decide to make the choice which conforms with what is accepted, that's great. All power to you, because even within that, and as you see, there's a beautiful story of women in the book who are basically just changing the terms of marriage, even within their marriage. How boys are raised, what they do, like what you were just describing. After getting married, you decide to do what you want to do. There's stories like that. But then there are also other stories where women who just want to actuate being a bureaucrat. There's a woman in the book who just wants to be a very successful bureaucrat. That's really what gives her a lot of power and happiness. The way our society is architected to constantly make her feel bad about herself, I think that's the kind of lopsided thing that I think we should try and figure out a way where we can create systems where, it shouldn't also be the reverse, because there are women in the book who I met who will say to me, I don't have a career and I constantly feel judged for it. And I think this goes back to your point, which is I think we could just tone down the judgment and see each other based on like the pragmatic, practical choices that we have to make in a very difficult society where an economy is not working for us at all.
The deck is stacked against you, so the most that you can take. Yeah.
I mean, if you're working, आप काम किसी के हिसाब से करो तब तक ठीक हो. If you want to really
Yeah.
challenge the status quo,
Yeah.
be not a conformist. You got to go through that. Either you go before marriage or after marriage. But you are anyway going through.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Anyway going.
yeah.
So it's not been an easy thing.
Yeah. Either way, you're right. Whichever path you choose, you will face that resistance, and you got to find a way to overcome. I want to invite any questions that people have, because I don't want to monopolize the conversation, and it's raining like never before, and so I think people will want to move. Any questions?
Yeah, hi. So my question was, when we are talking about, as you said, that there are many women who don't want to work, and they are looked on by another woman only. Right? Like, today if you say I'm a housewife, it's a very big work. Like I'll say more than anything else, like, bringing up children, like taking care of your in-laws, because they are doing that because the other person is out to work. So it's a big responsibility and a big work. So why do they look down upon those women who are at home? That's a big thing in our society, that now it's become, oh, I'm going to work. But today, when you see, like I've seen in today's generation, when we talk about girls, they say, oh, I'm working. But do you think they can even carry on their costs? They can't even have a house for themselves, like the elite class I'm talking about, especially the elite class, where they want this label, oh, I've gone abroad and I've done my this studies. You come back, get married, and just live an elite life, going shopping and all that. And but yet they will work. Say, oh, I'm working. But where is the money? Your husband is taking care. So what do you call those women? Like, we talk about empowerment, we talk about, but where are those women who are just doing all this and
Yeah.
then breaking up?
Well, very few of them are Shah Rukh fans. I'm kidding. But in fact, in the book, I'll tell you a couple of things. And this is very, Ashi, this is very, what you just said is something that's very important to me and also in the book. I was 100% one of those people who used to really like look down. There's a certain kind of person. I don't know, in Bombay and Jaipur you have these people, but in Delhi we have princesses. Like they're like, we call them Delhi princesses. Always perfectly turned out, like their job. But actually, but I'm very serious. Beauty is a job. To look beautiful requires, especially in sort of that algorithmic form, requires effort beyond. I mean, it is not. I mean, now it is not easy. But I used to definitely be one of those people who used to look at this kind of, the so-called Delhi princess and look down on them. Oh, aap kaam nahi karti, aap bas pure din parlor mein baithi rehti hain. This is, in my head, this is what I thought. Through the course of the book, and you should read it, there's a woman, I call her the Rajput philosopher. She's the woman I was talking about. She had this arranged marriage. She was not happy with the arranged marriage. When I initially met her, I just completely dismissed her, but turned out she told me, I'm a Shah Rukh fan, you must come interview me. She was very keen. And I think for some of the reasons that you are hinting at, I think later we realized she felt very like, she wanted to tell me that I am not the person you think I am. And she said, come meet me. And she used to live in Raipur. And I used to go and I went and started interviewing her. And the things I learned, I mean, the way she has put in so much effort on her boys, because her biggest thing is she has 2 boys. And she said to me, my main job in life is to make sure they grow up to be like Shah Rukh, which is that they should make women feel safe. She comes from a family background where men are very stoic and fairly aggressive. She wants to raise boys who are liberated from that environment. And the amount of effort, I mean, she reads blogs, she's trained herself, she follows her. I mean, this is effort beyond, I think, what many of us would understand. And that's parenting. And she's had to deal with a lot. She's trying to also just do what she wants to do within her marriage. She's trying to build a library collection, do different things, right? But on the surface, she would risk that kind of this judgment that you're talking about. And I think that's why maybe Shinjini started with this point, and I think it's very much a message in the book for me, which is I really hope as women we read the book and these different stories, because each one is so different from us, and realize how many blind spots we have, right, when we're looking at these people. So, and in reverse, for example, who is a career woman? I mean, there's a statistical definition of what a career woman is, what you were asking, right? The statistical definition of a career woman is anyone who has an independent income, right? Whatever that might be. A statistical definition of an independent woman is someone who can do without reliance, right? Who is self-reliant. And I think that's where the word autonomy comes in. It's very different. Right now, the statistics show only about 10% of our labor force of women is economically self-reliant. I mean, wealth is in the hands of others, you're dependent on others. But I will say that even in that world, I've met women like that, and they're in the book, who, there's a career on the surface of it. In Bombay, they joke and they call them interior design women always as a joke, like you have a design job. So it's a joke. And, but the one thing I've realized is actually this is hard work as well. They're constantly, I mean, they're striving. And so I think what we should be thinking about is not the judgment we already perceive or the judgment we're giving, but perhaps see each other with more empathy, like more, I think less judgment in our lens would be very helpful. And I think it'll also be very helpful as a movement to coalesce around some very important things that we need to get done for women in the economy. no one right now is advocating for some of our biggest issues. Why don't we give tax breaks to people like her when she's setting up a business? Why are we not thinking about tax breaks for single women when I want to buy a house, right? Who is going to advocate? We keep judging each other and keep, this stuff. We'll never find unity. And so I'm much more interested in, much like Shah Rukh, things that can unite us. And I think that's probably where. So I hear you, I know exactly what you're saying, and it's something that I at least try to address the best I could. But I think part of the solution is on all ends to just tone down the judgment.
I think the rain is making it impossible to actually hear each other. It's crazy. I think we should close unless somebody has a question.
Ma'am, firstly, I am a Shah Rukh Khan fan. Not a big fan, but I am a Shah Rukh Khan fan. And I agree with ma'am about how I can't see somebody romantically if I don't know them personally. But I see this, you spoke about this duality in the Shah Rukh Khan persona. You spoke about this duality in the Shah Rukh Khan persona. About like portraying a sensuality on screen and being somebody very strongly in favor of fidelity and kind of representing the movement of fidelity in Bollywood. So, I personally like him for that reason. I like that duality, and I like that he represents a fidelity that I personally romanticize about marriage. I just wanted to know if that came out in your statistics.
Yeah, it does. It does. But you know what? It only comes across amongst elite women. If you start to go to women in the precariat, you start to go to women in the emerging middle class, they're not that interested in the marital monogamy story. They're much more interested. For example, the women in the emerging middle class, to them, he's not an actor. To them, he's a self-help guru. Because, he's one of our actors who's said a lot about making something of yourself in your career. He does a lot of lectures, right? One of the things you realize in the book is how much people, it's not just his movies, it's his interviews. So people really, really listen to the things he's saying about career, interview, advice. That in the middle class is sort of the thing that, he's not a celebrity, he's not an actor, he is a self-help coach. I mean, and you'll see it. I have a woman, this bureaucrat I was telling you about, who just wants to be a bureaucrat. She maintains quotes of his, and anytime she feels bad, she'll open up like a little quote, and her answers to me are about quotes. The last thing I'll say is, I think for a lot of women among sort of that top 10% English speaking, who had a lot of access to the interviews about monogamy as well, this becomes a big issue. I mean, this is a thing that they love. But as they age further, I noticed there's a big age shift, particularly women above the 40s, in their late 30s and 40s. It's never also about monogamy, it's about how he treated women in the workplace as co-actors, right? Like that, the flip side to monogamy is that there's that aspect of it, right?
Shrayana, I have a question here. Why Shah Rukh Khan for you? And why did you associate the word women? Huh?
Oh, I didn't.
Right.
The women I spoke to did.
Huh?
I didn't. The women I spoke to did.
But why not the others? Why only Shah Rukh?
No, let me start. Actually, it's interesting. When I went to, this is 2005, 2006, forests of Jharkhand, villages of UP, slums of Ahmedabad, people barely mention, men love Salman. This is like a very clear taxonomy. Men loved Salman, women love Shah Rukh. And my funniest was, one of these women said to me, we want men to be like Shah Rukh, but we get men like Salman instead. Like this was the taxonomy, yeah? So you'd hear other actors, but you wouldn't hear them with that level of energy. So I think the reason Shah Rukh comes up is, one, of course, I wanted someone who would unite us in a conversation, exactly as I think what we were talking about, no judgment, but a conversation.
And the more you heard about Shah Rukh Khan, you started falling in love with him, huh?
So yeah, but
his character.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I don't want to, and I realize this is really impossible.
Too much noise, yeah.
But I'll say one thing, which is, I was a very typical fan. Like I'm not some, I watched his movies and all of that. But I think when you read the book and you see the things that I've seen, how much women struggle just to buy a ticket to be able to watch him. Women who say that when they see songs in Kal Ho Na Ho, they feel like they are reminded of this arranged marriage that they did not want to have. How he's relief to like construction workers, domestic workers. He's become more than I think just an actor for me. I think through the course of these conversations, I can't differentiate now him from this question of autonomy. There are people who see him very differently. There are people who hate him. There'll be men writ large hate him. I think he was sent to this country for men to dislike and men to feel uncomfortable by. But that's another book for someone else to write. I think I was interested in, I think, what you were actually saying, which is if there's something, is there a thread that can unite many women into conversation? Why don't we explore that? And that's what he is.
So looking at the finance aspect, right? She's from the finance background, you from the finance background, yeah? So tell me something, while it's about definitely women and being them self-reliant, having to buy a ticket and go and see Shah Rukh Khan, a little more deeper connection is what I'm seeking in terms of the financial literacy part that, I'd like to hear from you.
No, so I mean, the book is actually about exactly that, which is 15 years of women's journeys of how they become financially independent. And I'm not going to give it away, you'll have to read what happens in each one's story. Each one, at the time I met them, they were struggling. 15 years down the line, they don't need anyone to help them open an account, go watch a Shah Rukh film. They have money on their own, and there's a reason they've worked very hard. And the stories tell you a history of what that is. It's a book of economic history. But the one thing I will actually say, which is I think very, very critical, is that policies are not helping. And you'll see this in the book, which is one of the things you realize actually in each woman's life, there are many things that government could do. It's not costly, it's low-hanging fruit. I was talking about tax incentives, for example, simplifying certain procedures. There are very simple things that policies can do, and the book kind of starts to make sense of that. But what is fascinating to me is just the journeys that each one of these women make to just stand on their own 2 feet. Some are single, some are not, some rely on their husbands, some leave their husbands and then come back to their husbands. But the one thing they hold on to is this quest to every day wake up and just be financially independent, literate, autonomous beings. And it's a very, very long period of struggle. But at the end of it, there's not a single woman in the book who's not on her own 2 feet.
So in fact, that is the crux of this issue, right? I was telling you that if you want to hit at patriarchy, then the deepest and strongest thing you have to deal with is equality on money, because that's how you have been deprived. That asset ownership is where you have primarily been detached from your autonomy, right? So by taking it back. So the very fact where we started, right? Care work. So unpaid work, taking care of the home, like you said, taking care of children, taking care of the elderly, unpaid, then low paid. So I have many people who will tell me, oh, women cook all the time, but men are the best chefs. And I'm like, yeah, if tomorrow washing dishes became a paying job, men would become the best dishwashers. But as long as it's free work, then women have to do it. So money is so important in that understanding of equality and understanding of autonomy. And we don't talk about it enough with women. Men are born and raised to talk about material conditions. A 10-year-old boy will most likely know whether they live in a rented house or a owned house. And if something were to happen to his father, where would he go? A girl, even when she's 20, most likely thinks this home is not hers and she'll go somewhere else. It creates a very deep dissonance in the way you think about autonomy. And that's when you talk about, policy, society, each other. How do we get around some of these things? It becomes very, very important. I think the noise is a lot, but...
Can I just, add one thing to what you want to say? And then she has a question. Just one thing I wanted to add to you. In the book, one of the things you realize is the moment women become economically autonomous, you can buy and do whatever you want, right? Exactly what you were saying. So all these women, for example, at least in the book, many of them they're on their own 2 feet, then they start watching Shah Rukh. You see the backlash. So in these villages where these women try and organize their screenings, or when they want to watch movies, there's violence, TVs are broken, phones are taken away. And you see, so when I say this 15-year journey, I mean, something we think is very simple and banal, just being a fan of an actor, it's dangerous stuff in our country because it hints at women having their own economic muscles. And it really threatens many people. And it's an ugly conversation, I think, that we don't want to have. I've tried to have it in some way in the book. But I think that's where it connects as well, the backlash from patriarchy when they see women standing on their own 2 feet. Sorry, you had a question, ma'am.
No, no. I just wanted to share a few things. Okay. Audible? So one thing is this, that I feel that Shah Rukh is so much loved a character, a person, because of his off-screen persona rather than on-screen persona. What he is a self-built man and a one-woman man. These are two things I think that attract women a lot. That he was so desperate to buy a beautiful house for her wife, because when he married, he was not so successful, but he promised her a big house. And how many actors own a place like Mannat in Mumbai? So this is one thing that brings him to the limelight, that, he did something so big for the one he married. And I think his films are not as good as, he's not a very, very good actor. Let us be very honest about it. But yes, he's a person who is loved more off screen for what he is as a person, I think.
I think that's for people who can watch his interviews off screen. I really want you to realize that.
Yes.
And that's 10% of the country.
Yes.
I mean, so I know exactly what you mean because, I talk to people, they'll say to me, love him for Mannat. Why have you come to Mannat? You talk to people outside Mannat, why have you come to Mannat? It's like middle class Qutub Minar, like people think we want to see it because this man built it on his own.
Yes.
Yeah.
And second thing that I wanted to share is that when we were talking about economic freedom, I was in the process of buying a house for myself. I'm a married woman. But the builders were like shocked when I went to their offices all alone. Ma'am, आप अकेले choose करोगे? I said, yeah. Ma'am, आप decision ले लोगे? I said, yeah. So they said, okay. तब वो मुझे दिखाते थे. और देखने के बाद जब final deal close होने लगी, till then my husband was not in the picture. They were so surprised. They said, are you married? You stay together? I said, yeah, I'm married. But yes, of course, he's not in the same town. That is why I'm taking all the decisions. And he has enough faith on me to take the decision. So they were like, okay, so he'll come for the registry. I said, no. And the registrar office, people were looking at me like this. I mean, this woman has come all alone without a brother, without a husband. And it was an ajuba for them. And one of the men who were there with the team of the owners, builders who had come, finally went there after a few months. He said, you are the one who came without anybody, right? I said, yeah. So they remember you. They remember you. You are one character who's doing such a thing. I mean, it is a surprise, they are not able to take it. When my husband met them, then again they said, sir, this is the first case we have seen ma'am taking all the decisions.
So let's close this. And I do want to say thank you. And I have a small gift for both of you because you took the trouble to come all the way and you hosted us.
I have a small gift for both of you.
That is so sweet. Okay. And Shrayana, your gift is already the book. So that's wonderful. These rains have just been crazy. But I do want all of you to connect. Nidhi is part of my team and she will be in Jaipur for another week. And I request all of you to connect with her for any questions you have. I request Nidhi to give the gifts to the people and to our guests.